you everyone for coming here. And yeah, as the discussion, as the title says, let's talk about secrets of music. So since we're talking about the emotional part and the importance of music in series and films, could you share from your own experience a moment or a scene from your work that music totally transformed the scene, something that you still remember, something that you felt that music was changing the whole emotional structure? Whoever wants to start.
Am I off? Okay.
Composer.
I was scoring a movie in Los Angeles with, among others, the Australian actor Brian Brown. And there's a scene in the film where his girlfriend leaves him and leaves him a letter. And he's walking through the now empty house, reading the letter, with no expression on his face at all. He's literally just walking and reading. And I wrote a piece of music to underscore this particular scene. When the review came out in the Hollywood Reporter, it said Brian Brown's acting is magnificent, especially in the scene where he reads the letter from his girlfriend with all these emotions going through his mind. And of course, there was nothing there. It was all the music. But that's one example that's pretty near the bone.
That's great. I don't know if from the producer side or the creator side.
I remember the first time I realized how important music was. I was 12 years old, and I saw the original Planet of the Apes movie, which has this absolutely astonishing score by Jerry Goldsmith. And I don't know, it has, ooh, ooh, you hear the call of the gorillas that are hunting the human beings.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. And then my first job in television was The X-Files, where we did 24 episodes a year. And in those days, you did not do temp score. You cut dry. And then we'd go to the composer's house, Mark Snow, and everything got at least 50% better automatically, like without doing anything. It became my favorite part of the process, was listening to music. And I realized the composer is not only your most important viewer, he or she is like a doctor who's taking your pulse, listening to your heartbeat, figuring out what your story should be, where it's missing things, and using music to enhance the narrative and the audience's response to the narrative. And it's absolutely transformational. And I love it because I don't have to do anything. I just listen and enjoy 90% of the time.
Oh, that's important. That's great impact. And let's switch back to a composer, since Nicholas is watching us online. So from your perspective, I mean, something that you can share with our audience?
Yes, it's not the same as John's, because in this case, it was Dumbledore lying dead in the courtyard outside the hospital. Sorry, outside the the castle, and everybody's surrounding him. And I was told this has to be, the biggest moment in the film. We've really got to make this sing and work, and I had to dig deep. It took a long time to write the piece, and in the end, it turned out to be very simple. But we didn't really know. We discussed how to do actually Dumbledore dying, and basically he dies in a flash, and then there's no music, and then we come to this bit where he's lying, and the whole emotion of Dumbledore's death comes then. And it's the music builds, and I think it's probably one of my favourite pieces of scoring that I've ever done, but it was the hardest.
Nice. more producer side as well. So
No,
let's try to
I would
balance
say
it.
the music and the whole sound concept is absolutely critical. I mean, it's like a second word, because something is visual, what you see, or you have made a shot on the camera, and then you are building this word. It helps you actually to create the atmosphere of the whole scene, and the music is just a huge part of the whole perception of the final product, if we call it like that, and it gives you the final feeling. What is it? It gives you the feeling, what genre, what kind of approach you have to the topic, to the story, and so I actually love to work with music in the post-production. In general, you can do so much in post-production, and even with the editing, but the music is again a huge part of it, and you can kind of recreate the feeling of the scene or give it the right solution. So I think it's great, and I think it's very important, and it's actually the tool how you can, even with a relatively small resources, do much bigger thing if you need, because it can help you to create emotions, to help to create big appeal to the audience. So.
Yes.
Actually, this is the nicest panel I'm attending for the last years, because I am totally a music lover. When I was studying in film school, I was a DJ and journalist, say, in music radio. So I say that I'm the most musical producer in Poland, because I hear music all the time. And for me, composer, this is my favorite stage of the production, no matter if I'm directing or producing, because at the end of the work, we have many technical things, where the actor is standing, where lamp is standing, how fast we go. And then there is a gentleman or gentlewoman coming with this suitcase of emotions and is critically looking at everything what we've done, and then he or she puts a paint of sadness here, sentiment, relax, and then we see what we've done. And it's fantastic, because this is like, this is the best position of composer, to interpret everything what we've done before. And this is a final touch, this is wonderful. I would like to recall the miracle which happened when I was doing a documentary as a director, photographer, which is often listed on the list of the most important documentaries in the history, which is based on unusual finding color slides, first ever in the history, made in Lodz Ghetto by Nazi chief accountant. And I wanted to analyze every slide. They were 35 millimeters, so small pictures. I made them large, and I was traveling through the faces of people in color, people who disappeared, they were murdered. So a lot of silence, a lot of, just analysis of camera, faces, children, women. And I asked my friend, one of the outstanding composer, Michał Lorenz, and I told him, please make a big music, symphonic music to this. And I have to say that working on the subject, the first moment I cried was when I watched this film with his music. He made me cry.
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, on the power of music, and especially exactly what we're talking about, and taking the cue from your side, when is the right moment, or how it is the collaboration between a director, a producer, and a composer, like how it happens or how should happen? Because there are stories that music might come on the right end, which probably doesn't work as it should be.
Mistake, total mistake.
So yes, I would like to, since we have both sides here on the panel, let's see your opinion on when is the right moment to, because we know when it's the right time to have editor, or when it's, or a script, of course, or DOP. We don't discuss about music, or when the composer comes into the set.
I'm sure Frank writes thinking about music.
I write to music. I have a different soundtrack for everything that I write, but I tend to just look for a composer whose work I admire, and then I want to react to them. I don't want to impose upon them my preconceptions. And it is interesting, like for the X-Files, for instance, because there were so many episodes, you could tell when there was something wrong with what you'd written, because the composer's score was not matching what you hoped the scene would be. And that was my fault, not the composer's fault. It was clear like the text had misled the composer and it wasn't coming across the way you intended it. But what I find really instructive is when you give a scene to a composer and it's like this really sensitive barometer that's coming back at you with what they think the scene should be. And it is like moment by moment tracking your emotional engagement with what you're watching. But I will say that like the one exception to this was I did a series in Italy called Medici, and this brilliant Italian composer, Paolo Bonvino, it was a different approach than anything I'd ever done before or since, because his music was like a counterpoint to the scene. It wasn't like tracking your kind of subconscious, emotional journey through the scene. It was like commenting on the scene. And it just brought this vigor and life to things, but it was a completely surprising way to go about it. So anyway, but I'm not a musician, so I want to be led by the composer. And then the hard part for me is when, which is very rare, where I feel like the composer's reading of the scene does not work with my goal for the scene, and then it's a process of discovery.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very interesting, because I worked on one movie with a director who at the outset said, I know nothing about music, which is always I'm not quite sure I know nothing about music is better than I know something about music, because either way you're in a bit of difficulty. But it was again set in Italy during the war. And it was a very emotional scene going on, and I wrote to what I saw. And he came back to me and said, you're inside the film, I want you outside.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I thought, I know what he means. He doesn't want me commenting on what I'm saying. He wants me objectively putting another voice onto this scene. And as soon as I did that, he went, that's exactly what I meant. But going back to your point about, when do you come in? It's very interesting, because my whole career I've been at script stage before a foot of film has been shot. I've been in with 3 days to go before the release of the film, and all points in between. And there's no rhyme or reason to what and when, really. Most of the ones where I've come in late haven't been rewrites of something else, although it has happened. Mostly they were a series of movies by first-time directors which went to Film 4, and the head of Film 4 said, you need music. And I got the panic call saying, this film is on air on Monday, it's Tuesday of the previous week, we need a score. And wallop, I wrote a score, and most of these films are still in the public eye. But nobody would know. When you see the finished product, you can't sit and say, oh, he was on the film from script stage, or this one came in 2 days before the release. So it is an interesting sort of fluid situation.
And maybe, Nicholas, do you have any panic calls like that?
Yeah, yes. I relate to John a lot, certainly a huge mixture. And in my early days, I did a lot of natural history films. And in that case, there was a lot of post-production time. So I would have quite a good amount of time to work on the music even before the fine cut. Going to the other end, I can remember doing my first TV series, and The Way We Live Now, and watching with horror my first score going out when I hadn't written the one for the one after the next. It used to really frighten me, that business. Working with David Yates, though, who did the Potters, we tended to like to work very early on. So, for instance, in The Order of the Phoenix, I was writing some music to a storyboard, and that proved very beneficial because it sort of gave him and the actors something to listen to, and we did approve it. We always used that piece it was actually for the entrance to the Ministry of Magic, which is a very big build score, part of the score. So that was the way we worked, and then there would always be the frantic, hasty ones right at the end. But I never really liked being stuck with having to still write while we were in the studio, and I have heard that happen to other people. Perhaps I've been a bit lucky.
Maybe, Philip, did you make any of the panic calls to any composer on the last moment, or?
It's always a there is always a panic call because you have to save something. I remember a series which we got from the broadcaster to be adapted, actually a Polish series, which we adapted for Czech Republic. And the series was very old, and we didn't really know what to do with it. It didn't somehow. We had to do a lot of work to adapt it. And they expected to make it for young audience, a romantic kind of series, and it was not in the original very well done. And we had the idea at a certain point that we got, and on top of it, they wanted us to shoot it very fast and to shoot it in the January and February, which is the ugly months, of how to, what can you do nice and romantic if you don't have sun and nice days. And we remembered of Love Actually movie. And we somehow converted it into a story happening before Christmas. So we used a lot of these lights like there on the tree, and we have used a lot of actually composed, but also music from already recorded songs, famous songs, and that make the series so much better, and it helped so much, and it actually was really loved by the public. So you can do a lot with, and it was maybe also a kind of panic call, how we solve this, and it was really successful. So what I would point on is like, don't forget to use songs, because like original version or originally already existing songs, because it can help a lot as well, and it gives you authenticity or some kind of like contemporary feeling many times when you're using or it can actually help you to, if you doing a retro series or historical series, you can use indeed the song from that time. So it's also part of the music indeed, and it's an important part of it to work with this.
And any stories?
Many stories. I can tell you about my failure.
We need more stories about not successes as well.
Yeah, because
what doesn't work.
That's much better, to learn. Once I had a film with a very established and experienced Polish director, and it was based on script which we developed without him even, and we had a plan to be like Polish Full Monty. So commercial comedy, and we attached the director, he shot the film, and everything was going very well. And then we invited the composer, and after some work, composer left after creating and recording the music, because the director said, this is not what I wanted. So he left, we paid the composer, we invited another one. After some time, this one also left after recording the music. So I was really curious what happened, what is behind. And the director said, no, this is not the kind of music I want. And then, totally in despair, because I had no money, I asked my favorite musical consultant, and we spent a couple of nights, and we took the music from the library. And it was amazing, because film was relatively small. and bringing the music. This is a fantastic experience when you put to one film different music and you see how it's changing. So I encourage you to go to the editing room, testing the music, different kind of music on every picture. And we put a bigger music, bigger than the film, and the film became live and full comedy, crazy, etc., etc. And I was very proud after a couple of nights, and I invited the director to watch, and next day I saw on my desktop the letter. In this letter he begged me to not to destroy his film with the music. And I have to say that was one of the moments when I was going to be a cruel producer, but then I came to the conclusion, okay, this is art house movie still. He has the right. He is the director, established director. I have to agree, and I agreed. And film in distribution with big distributor was total failure. Because people didn't want to watch it.
What a shame.
Yes, it was one of this, the lost child.
Yeah.
In a sense, but it shows that this kind of a dry film without music, sometimes it works when there is very factual narration, or something like this. But normally, film without music is like, I don't know, burger without meat.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to all vegans, of course.
Yeah.
I confess, though, I have been guilty in the past of wanting the composer to put in more music than the composer wants to put in. The composer's like, no, don't make this wall-to-wall music because we'll stop hearing the music. And so I sometimes have to be kind of like, okay, this is fine without music here. And but I'll watch movies, like I was watching a Hitchcock movie over the weekend, and it is amazing sometimes, like the strategic use of silence.
Yeah.
Especially in a suspense scene where you're expecting the music.
Where you expect.
When you choose to be quiet, it has a lot of power.
I tell an interesting story that follows that through. I was arranging and conducting a score for another very well-known composer, for a very well-known director. And there's a scene early in the film where the main protagonist drives up to visit somebody who's in a hospital, this mental hospital. And the director asked for a particular, we've got to know that something's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But the something that happened was about 45 minutes later.
Right.
So this driving scene, we did 14 versions of this particular scene. And because I wasn't the composer, because I've also done a lot of movies where I'm the arranger and conductor, it wasn't my place to say, do you know what? No music, please.
Yeah.
But we kept recording, and it was dramatic, it was neutral, and none of it worked.
Yeah.
None of it worked. But we kept doing it, And but that was very interesting because it was before I was really scoring movies myself. And watching people that I arranged for, how they dealt with particular moments in the film, like I worked for Elmer Bernstein or Rushi Sakamoto or Mark Isham or Eric Serra, and just seeing what they did imbued me with ideas of what I should do when I was doing it, if you like, although I was doing it sometimes simultaneously, which was also a bit of a worry.
And talking about inspiration, since you mentioned about how the scene was working, as a composer, do you feel like you're, when you are in the stage or when you are in the film, even from the script stage, do you feel that you got inspired from the narrative, or you create music for a special character of the film? It's like how it works from your creative side without necessarily conducting with a director?
Again, there's no real set template, because one movie you might do, for example, you could do two comedies. One would need all the comedy pointed up, and the other would need none of the comedy pointed up. That you wrote serious music that made it funnier. And that was interesting. The other interesting thing, of course, is doing things which I'm sure Nick will know and we'll talk about, is you do an action sequence and you pat yourself on the back and going, that was great. And then 2 days later, you've got to do another action sequence. It's like you've climbed Mount Everest and there's another one, there's K2 over there, you know. So you can never rest on your laurels, as it were, and say, well, you know, I just did that. That was wonderful. Because you've got to do it again.
And from Nicolas' point of view, maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can certainly remember trying to do an action sequence. Sorry to go back to Potter, but this is the duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic. And it was going to be, you know, highly charged music. And there's broken glass and everything is going in every direction. And I tried and I came up with all these different ideas and scores. I worked for ages on this thing. And in the end, we decided we didn't want music for that action sequence. Actually, the breaking glass did it all. So the music just gave way to the sound of the action. And I think it was by far the best idea. I was never going to make it with that sequence. Yeah.
Yes.
No, I was just going to say, it is interesting when you deal with something like an action sequence, because that is possibly the most obvious place where you're going to be doing something that will heighten the film. I mean, when I did two Bond movies, when I did Goldeneye, the tank chase, I knew what they had to have. When I did No Time to Die, I was arranging for Hans Zimmer, so it was a different situation for me because he laid the bed and I just added the spice on top, if you like.
And talking about genres, I mean, I'm going back to on the side of the producers and the directors. When you think about, okay, you're creating a thriller or a comedy or an action film, is it like you have like in your mind some specific composer, or you have an idea of how can you choose who's the right composer for your film? What is the connection? Is previous work? Many of the composers have very versatile and different content. So what makes you to connect to or feel connected to someone?
You know, it's also very personal taste. In all my films as a director, even if it was documentary, I always prefer symphonic music, frankly speaking, although it's difficult and it's expensive. But for me, this white music gives you more possibilities because I have a special recipe of use of the music. Because at home, I listen to the music out loud, you know, because I want to be in. But in a film, I love to use the amplitude. And especially symphonic music is very good to be treated different way. Very often during the mixing, I'm taking the mix of music for myself because I want this to be led by my feeling. And sometimes music, symphonic music, can be very low, you know, you just hear something and then your focus is, your attention is very much sharpening, you know. And also music can play as effects, as climate, as standing wall, you know, that you don't feel it, it's transparent, but you still, by skin, you feel the presence of the music. So very, very randomly, I'm playing music in films I produce or make in full scale. This is very funny, you know, because all the people mixing are saying, you paid for symphonic music, so why not to play all the time loud? I said, no, I prefer one moment when it's loud, you know, because then everybody knows that this is the moment.
Yeah. I had that experience because in TV, you rarely have the time for live musicians and symphonic, at least in my experience. But I did 2 X-Files movies, and we had a full symphony, 20th Century Fox stage. It was like one of the most thrilling, you know, experiences of my life to be present with the orchestras playing this music. But in a movie, as opposed to most TV series, I find like the composer, one of their tools is themes. like character themes or narrative themes that they weave through the movie to remind you this connects to her story or to his story. And it's happening for the vast majority of the audience. It's completely working on a subconscious level, but it's actually helping you understand the narrative you're watching.
Yeah.
It's just, it's amazing how many, because music comes at you in a, like you're sort of defenseless, right? Words you can kind of analyze and reject, but music you just feel. And that's why I say like the composer is like your most important audience, because they're seeing what your text, what your filmmaking has given you, and they're filling the cracks, or that wasn't quite high enough, I'm going to make it a little higher for you. But they also know not to, like actually it won't tolerate being that high, or like you said about that scene actually will never do that. You know, you're wrong in your intention. It's it's an amazing part of the process.
It is. Also an interesting point that has to come up, I guess, and Nick, I'm sure, will have feelings on this, but my main career in TV and movies occurred before the ability to create demo tracks and temp scores. I would literally go in and play atrociously bad piano and go, this is the love theme. And the producer and director would go, oh yeah, great. So, not having a clue what I was doing, and then get on stage with a full orchestra and they go, yes, I've got it, I got it. But it's interesting that for literally maybe 4% of the TV and movies I did came into the demo area. But before that, big sequences were just done on trust. And I sort of wondered how much, because technology has advanced so that a synth demo doesn't now sound like a bad fairground organ, that it's changed people's perception and relationship, as has things like there's no final cut. You can mess about with Avid for
on the stage
up to transmission. So that sort of changes where the composer's position is somewhat. I don't know if Nick's found that.
Well, it's interesting because I came in to doing film music just at the technology point where you could start doing demos on very, very awful samples. But somehow, people did get it, and later on when I started scoring things properly, we would get there. But I can remember on one film that the demo score, when we put it against the film, was so feeble sounding, and this is meant to be a big film, that I said, oh my God, we'll just have to beef everything up. So I'd written this sort of really quite transparent score. So, brought in the tubas and the bassoons and all the brass and everything. We filled it out, got to the stage of actually recording it, and found it was all too much. And actually the demo had been right, and we pulled everything out again. Yeah. So, and completely went back to it was close to the demo mix, but it was alive, and it just had the space and size because it was true. But, the samples did not do it. There's no way they could actually give that feeling. So although I've never had to do the thing you've had to do with the piano, just as well, I think, you never know. You just have to take it on trust sometimes. And
it was trust.
Yeah.
And I mean, my feeling now is that there's no need for that trust anymore. Therefore, the goalposts have moved slightly. I don't know if you find that you've talked about going on to the stage with Mark and hearing this marvelous orchestra. Now it's possible that people can hear a marvelous orchestra almost before they go on the stage. That wasn't possible back in the 80s and 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that people's perception of music has shifted somewhat, because in my day you would meet the director and the editor and that would be it. Nobody else. Now you go into a room full of people, and there are screenings, and we're going to put this out and have a focus group, and they're going to tell you that the music's no good, and it's changed. Mm-hmm. It has changed.
Yeah.
I don't like demos the same way as I don't ask DOPs, to give me demos and to choose. But sometimes trust might be misleading. I have to say that I experienced that in my life when I produced a film with Agnieszka Holland, and we had big period adventure drama, and without even thinking, we said that this name of the composer is perfect because he's full, energetic, and he will give us temperament to this. And without any demo, we invited him to make the music. There was two months silence, and we got the music. And then we put that on the line, and there was one sound here, one sound here. We said maybe that's a mistake about the tapes. There's another sound after 20 seconds, and I called this wonderful Polish director, composer, very successful, and I said, unfortunately, it looks like we didn't get the music. And he said, no, I was afraid that you may say so, because at the moment I have a very minimalistic period in my creativity. So we kindly thanked him, paid, and turned to other composer.
It was the right person, wrong timing.
Yes, this is a creator, so he has rights to be in minimalistic period. Why not?
Yeah.
We respect the right of the creator to have minimalistic period.
I think you need to have, as a producer or showrunner, you always need to have your idea. So it's probably you choose a composer which you expect that he will do more or less what you will do, and you like his previous work, and you like kind of the sound of what he's doing, and so normally we work in our team. We have one composer who works with us already several projects, so we can discuss very openly, and we can try and see different ways, and. But it's also, as you all said, I mean, it's important to have someone who can be like a second eye, and basically to have the opportunity to have his opinion on the work at the same time. But at the same time, you want something as a result, and you should know what you want if you are producer and showrunner of it. So you should not just give it like that and say, do something.
Yeah. But it is interesting that, I went for a meeting about a film in Los Angeles, and the first thing they said is, we just had a score done by Jerry Goldsmith, and it's crap. And I just sat there and thought, well, if you don't like what he's done, you're not going to like what I'm going to do. But a friend of mine who's just passed away, actually, wrote a very good book that I recommend to everybody. It's called Torn Music, and basically it's about big movies that had their score replaced, and it's everyone. It's Elmer Bernstein, John Barry, Jerry Goldsmith, Henry Mancini, Michel Legrand. I mean, if you're precious about what you've written, don't read this book. But if you want to know how things don't quite work with people who are geniuses, to be honest. Torn Music. It's a fascinating read.
Something that I was hearing. Sorry.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Something I was hearing made me think of one of the composer's jobs that I've always considered is to be able to read the director's mind. I mean, almost get inside the brain, so that I can actually, it's almost like I let them write the music inside my head. It sometimes works, and it
Usually
does
not.
avoid it does avoid this awful moment when I turn up with something and everybody's going, oh, I wasn't expecting that at all. So I really got into this thing of trying to understand what a director was really wanting. And working with the script and the director to try and find it. That's what I saw my job as, a sort of mind reader.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. Most composers I've worked with are very patient, most of them, and are really there to understand your intention. And when I do give notes on a score, I almost never talk about instrumentation or anything specific like that. I talk more about what I want to
Emotion,
feel,
yeah.
what it is this is what I want,
We
and
see
I feel like I'm not getting.
The important thing that people miss, and I'll talk about this tomorrow, is writing music for the media is a collaboration. And all music should be a collaboration, but somehow people who get to the point of writing music for film then become precious. And they go, you can't touch my music, this is what I've written, if you don't like it, you can, whatever. You have to take into account that the director has probably lost his best scene, the editor has had his best work cut out, the screenwriter's lost their best line from the script. Why shouldn't the music be messed about with? But maybe it's the artistic thing of, the great artist in his garret sort of syndrome. But I've seen it firsthand, is composers storming out the room and saying, this is what I've written, and if you don't like it, forget it. And I've seen that happen. So why should it be just the composer who has that and
Nobody else gets
nobody
that.
else? Yeah. So it's, the collaborative thing is very, very important.
But here I would defend the right of composer to bring his first intuition, because my observation is, we all work scene by scene. We are writing scene by scene, and we know this is an active scene, and the leader of the scene is this one. Then we change to another, and then there is a problem because you are not putting music, scene by scene, because you will have mosaic and house. What I'm very surprised always, and I love this surprise, the composer is coming, and he says, I would put music from this scene to this scene.
Oh, yeah.
And he's cluing something which I never expected.
No.
And, sometimes he's underlining, revealing to me ties between different heroes all of a sudden, So this is something which nobody can do except great composer.
No. I agree, but it is a balance between being able to do that and being able to write like that, but also having the flexibility to move if somebody says, what about this? What about that? And to be honest with you, the guy storming out, which happened on the film that I was orchestrating and arranging, it wasn't a terrible request. It wasn't rewrite everything you've done. It was, could we take that sound out?
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it at the time.
Yeah.
And it did end in tears. So,
but I think it's. I'm wondering, John, if you, like me, have had to put up with the pain sometimes of a piece you really loved, or everybody really loved, and it been taken out, and you come back to see the film, and it's not there.
Absolutely.
Because now you were talking about films getting, noodled with, and that's what noodling was a terrible thing. But interesting enough, there was one film, it was a big film, and I'd written a really fun jazz piece for a part, and when it came out, the jazz piece had gone. And actually, a piece from the previous film, this is a Potter film, had been put in its place. And there were bits missing, and I was with the musicians and the screening, and we were all going, oh no, oh God. And I was so upset. And I look at it now, and actually it's the best film score I've got out there.
no, this is...
So actually they were completely right.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was so attached to it, it was very painful. I didn't walk out because I couldn't. Too late.
I did a film with Ridley Scott producing, and there's a scene where the main actor gets more and more agitated, and I wrote a fugue that developed through it. And at the end of the take, the musicians applauded, and I went, uh-oh,
Yeah.
that's not a good sign. And I went up to the control room, and Ridley said, what would it be like if you just played one note and held it through the whole scene? And I went, it would be like this. And we did it, and it worked.
It was.
And it's in the film, and I won the Emmy for the score, so go figure.
Oh, painful.
What I would advise everybody who is working with music in the film, not to close editing before music comes and until the composer comes, because very often it happened to me that a composer watching the film was asking, please give me 10 frames more because I need that, because I hear it should be longer. So to be flexible, to change the editing together with the composer, even if the music is not written, still listen to composer. Yeah.
I mean, I've had a few movies where I've actually suggested things that have then been put into the film as scenes. I sit with the director, I saw a funny thing the other day, X, Y, Z, and there it is on screen. It gets written into the script. So, no, you should never be shy of talking about anything other than music when you're in a music spotting session, because you might raise something that nobody's actually thought of.
Absolutely.
That's the interesting thing. And as you say, seeing it from a composer's eye, maybe that scene could be a bit longer, or maybe we should start the music after they come in the room rather than before,
Absolutely.
Is that too close to the next cue? There's a song there, but the sound of it just doesn't fit with what we've done before. We need to bridge it somehow so it doesn't sort of spring out at you. All these things that you wouldn't think were a part of the composer's remit.
Yep.
And they do become it.
Actually, we sometimes do actually always we do that. We take the music from the previous project and we put them in the editing like a sample for us.
This is the worst you can make.
Why do you think so?
Especially if the director takes music with no rights, which is very expensive, the Beatles.
No, we use it in the editing.
He says the best fits this one,
But then
it really helps you to see how the whole thing works with the music, because you need to see the whole emotion when you are editing.
As long as you're not into temp love, which is the bane of every composer.
It's inescapable now. I find like the broadcasters demand it.
They do now.
They can't watch it without the
because they're not able to watch the offline.
Yeah, they don't understand it without
they don't understand it.
And then you do get locked into certain, you're cutting to the rhythm of the temp track.
Yeah.
And so then you've handcuffed the composer.
Yeah.
But that happens all the time now.
All the time.
Another interesting experience is that music is, this is my point of view, I don't know if you agree, that in general, when editing, you have to make a space for music because music is speeding up the film for 20-25%. So if you made the editing very tight, exactly as you want to be paced, then music is making crazy, because...
I think there's some directors like Michael Mann or Ridley Scott, you watch their films and there are sequences that are just music.
Absolutely.
They're actually kind of non-narrative. They're just designed to create a sense of mood.
Well, a movie I did, Funny Bones, which I'm very proud of as a film, the last 20 minutes has one line of dialogue. It's all music. The whole last 20 minutes of the film. And that Peter Chelsom, who I work with a lot, just said, we don't need any dialogue. Let the music tell the story. For me, it was fantastic.
Pure cinema.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to interrupt this. Now it's heating up, but we are running out of time. But it seems like this, as Darius said, this very nice panel has to end for now. I would like to thank you for being here. Tomorrow there's your masterclass. At what time is it? It will be on the schedule.
we will tell you.
Sometime tomorrow.
Perfect. So if the audience, if anyone wants to come and attend the masterclass, it will be also have an open time for Q&As because we do not have time for this session. So more music discussion tomorrow. So thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Nicholas, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.